The chronicles of this galactic conflict are etched not only in the grand strategies of admirals and the edicts of senators, but in the grit under a clone trooper's boot, the hum of a Jedi's lightsaber, and the quiet resolve of those caught between the great engines of war. This is the story of the Clone Wars, a struggle that defined a generation and reshaped the stars. It is a tale of heroes and villains, of impossible choices and unforeseen consequences, and of a republic fighting for its soul, unaware that its fate was already being written by a hidden hand. A lesson on a coral moon. The war was young, its embers still glowing with the fires of Geonosis. In these early days, victory was measured not in conquered systems, but in secured allegiances. The strategic world of Toydaria, with its access to vital outer rim shipping lanes, remained neutral. It was a prize the Republic could not afford to lose, and so they dispatched one of their most formidable negotiators, Master Yoda. On the coral moon of Rugosa, where delicate fungi pulsed with faint, ethereal light, Yoda's vessel was forced down by a separatist blockade. He was met not by King Katunko of Toydaria, but by 2 battalions of battle droids under the command of Asajj Ventress, apprentice to Count Dooku. The test was simple and cruel. If Yoda and his 3 clone companions could prove the Republic's strength by defeating her forces, the king would consider an alliance. If they failed, Toydaria would join the separatists. What unfolded was not a battle of attrition, but a master class in the nature of the Force. Yoda, a small green whirlwind of disciplined energy, became the fulcrum around which the fight turned. He was not merely a warrior, he was a teacher. To his clone escorts Lieutenant Thyre, Jek, and Rice, he imparted a crucial lesson. They were not identical, disposable units, but individuals, their strengths amplified when they thought for themselves. He encouraged them to see beyond their training, to adapt, to be more than the number on their armor. As Ventress's droid forces closed in, Yoda moved like a phantom through the coral forests, dismantling tanks with effortless gestures and turning the droid's own weaponry against them. The clones, inspired, fought with newfound ingenuity. It was a demonstration that the Republic's power was not just in its numbers, but in the spirit of its defenders. King Katuunko, observing from afar, saw the truth. He saw a Jedi Master who valued the lives of his men, and he saw soldiers who fought with courage born of more than just programming. The king chose the Republic not because of a display of overwhelming force, but because of a demonstration of character. The separatist gambit had failed, and in the quiet aftermath on that glowing moon, a foundational truth of the coming war was laid bare. The conflict would be won or lost in the hearts and minds of individuals, not just on the battlefield. Chapter 2. The Shadow of the Malevolence. In the war's opening stages, the Separatist Alliance unveiled a weapon designed to inspire terror and shatter the Republic fleet, the Malevolence. A subjugator-class heavy cruiser of immense scale. Its true power lay in its twin mega-ion cannons. This was not a ship for engaging in ship-to-ship combat. It was a fleet killer. A single volley could disable every system on a Venator-class Star Destroyer, leaving it a helpless, drifting tomb for its crew, ready to be destroyed by conventional turbolasers. The weapon's success was devastating. Fleet after fleet in the Outer Rim vanished without a trace, creating a cloud of fear that choked supply lines and stalled the Republic's momentum. Jedi Master Plo Koon, commanding a small flotilla in the Abrogado system, was one of the first to encounter the behemoth. His ships were crippled in an instant. Adrift in an escape pod with a handful of clone survivors, facing the chilling prospect of a separatist hunter probe, Plo Koon's calm resolve never wavered. His bond with his men, particularly Commander Wolffe, was a testament to the Jedi's role as leaders, not just generals. It was Anakin Skywalker and his Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, who located the survivors. Their daring rescue, flying the small transport Twilight directly into the debris field and against Skywalker's orders, was a success. but it revealed the Malevolence's location. The Jedi Council now knew what they were facing, and the strategic priority of the entire Republic Navy shifted. The superweapon had to be destroyed. General Grievous, the cyborg commander of the droid army, chose his next target with strategic cruelty: a massive, unprotected Republic medical station orbiting the planet Rindelia. It was a facility housing over 60,000 wounded clones, a symbol of Republic compassion that Grievous intended to turn into a monument of its failure. The Republic fleet was too far to intercept. The only assets in range were Skywalker and his small Shadow Squadron, a group of pilots flying experimental Y-wing bombers. It was a desperate, almost impossible plan to use the bombers to attack the Malevolence's ion cannon before it could fire. What followed was a perilous flight through a nebula, a high-stakes gamble against time that tested the limits of both pilots and their machines. Chapter 3. Ampere's Strike Against a Behemoth. Anakin Skywalker's plan was audacious, bordering on reckless, a quality that was rapidly becoming his tactical signature. Shadow Squadron, composed of outdated but sturdy Y-wing bombers, was tasked with traversing the dangerous Balmorra Run Nebula to strike the Malevolence before it reached the Rindelia medical station. The nebula's magnetic fields and gravimetric anomalies would shield them from the Separatist warship's long-range sensors, but it also threatened to tear their own ships apart. The journey was a crucible. Pilots were lost to the unforgiving environment, their ships consumed by the roiling gas clouds. Skywalker, flying with a confidence that inspired his men, pushed them onward. He flew not by instruments alone, but with the Force as his guide, navigating the treacherous currents of the nebula. Ahsoka Tano, coordinating from a command ship, felt the weight of every loss, a sharp lesson in the cost of command. Yet, the squadron emerged, battered but intact, directly on the flank of the Malevolence. General Grievous was taken completely by surprise. The Republic bombers, small and agile, swarmed the colossal vessel. Their target was the bridge and the massive ion cannon. Skywalker led the charge, his astromech droid R2-D2 performing constant critical repairs. The attack was fierce and effective, damaging the weapon's systems and forcing Grievous to divert his attention. However, the ion cannon was not destroyed. It was merely damaged, its power cycling unpredictably. Just as the tide seemed to turn, a new complication arrived. Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo, on a diplomatic mission under the misguided assumption that Count Dooku would negotiate, flew her unarmed vessel directly into the battle zone. Her ship was immediately caught in a tractor beam. Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, who had arrived with a relief force, saw their mission shift from destruction to rescue. They infiltrated the vast enemy cruiser, their goal to save the senator and sabotage the ship from within. Inside the labyrinthine corridors of the Malevolence, a tense cat-and-mouse game ensued. Grievous hunted them relentlessly, while the Jedi worked to disable the hyperdrive. Padme, resourceful and brave, proved more than capable of aiding in her own rescue. In the end, they managed to program the ship's Navi computer to fly directly into the nearest moon. As the heroes escaped, the Malevolence met its end, not with a climactic explosion, but with a silent, catastrophic collision. The shadow it cast over the outer rim was gone, but its legacy was a stark reminder of the Separatists' technological ambitions and the ever-escalating nature of the war. Chapter 4. The Outpost on the Rishi Moon. In the quiet sectors of the galaxy, the war was often a lonely watch. On the desolate Rishi Moon, a small Republic outpost stood guard over a critical listening post, the last line of defense for the cloning facilities on Kamino. It was considered a remote, uneventful assignment, staffed by rookie clone troopers, including the members of Domino Squad, Heavy, Echo, Fives, Cut Up, and Droid Bait. They were fresh from training, still finding their rhythm as a unit, their personalities distinct despite their identical faces. Their quiet vigil was shattered by a surprise attack. Commando droids, elite and cunning, infiltrated the station, swiftly eliminating the troopers. Only the Domino Squad rookies and their sergeant survived the initial onslaught, forced to flee to the moon's rocky surface. They were cut off, their communications jammed. The Separatists now held the station, their plan to maintain the all-clear signal, allowing General Grievous's fleet to launch a surprise invasion of Kamino. The rookies, however, were not beaten. They fought with a desperate tenacity, driven by a duty that transcended their inexperience. Their plight was eventually discovered by Commander Cody and Captain Rex, who arrived for a routine inspection. Finding the station silent and the signal automated, the veteran officers quickly assessed the situation. They linked up with the surviving rookies, and together they formulated a plan to retake the station. The battle for the listening post was a brutal, close-quarters affair. The commando droids were formidable opponents, but the clones, combining the rookies' spirit with the veterans' experience, fought back yard by yard. They suffered losses. Cut-Up was carried off by a giant Rishi eel, and Droidbait fell defending his brothers. But they succeeded in regaining control of the command center. Yet, they knew the Separatist fleet was still on its way. The all-clear signal had to be disabled, but the commando droids had destroyed the controls. It was Heavy, the squad's heavy weapons specialist, who made the ultimate sacrifice. Understanding that the only way to warn the Republic was to destroy the entire outpost, he stayed behind to manually detonate the station's liquid Tibana fuel supply. His final act was one of defiant courage, a soldier securing victory for his brothers at the cost of his own life. The explosion obliterated the station and the automated signal, alerting the Republic fleet to the impending invasion. Kamino was saved. Echo and Fives, the last of Domino Squad, were inducted into the prestigious 501st Legion under Captain Rex, their shiny new armor, a testament to the harsh realities of a war that turned rookies into veterans overnight. Chapter 5. The Liberation of Ryloth. Part 1. The planet Ryloth, homeworld of the Twi'leks, was a world under siege. Its people were starving, held captive by the Techno-Union foreman, Wat Tambor, and his droid armies. For the Republic, the liberation of Ryloth was not just a strategic necessity, it was a moral imperative. The campaign was planned in 3 phases: a space assault to break the blockade, a ground invasion to secure a landing zone and free the capital, and a final push to drive the Separatists from the planet. The first phase fell to Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. It was her first major command, leading a squadron against the formidable Separatist blockade. Eager to prove herself, she disobeyed her master's orders for a patient, methodical attack, and led a direct frontal assault. The result was a disaster. Her squadron was decimated, the attack repulsed. The weight of her failure was immediate and crushing. It was a stark lesson in the difference between bravery and recklessness, a lesson paid for with the lives of the clone pilots under her command. Humbled and wiser, Ahsoka was given a second chance. This time, she listened to her master. Skywalker, flying his own fighter, drew the enemy's attention while Ahsoka executed a brilliant flanking maneuver. She piloted a damaged frigate on a collision course with the Central Separatist command ship, her forces evacuating at the last possible moment. The collision shattered the enemy flagship and, with it, the blockade. The path to Ryloth was open. Ahsoka had learned that leadership was not about personal glory, but about responsibility and trust in one's team. With a foothold secured, the second phase began. Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and the 212th Attack Battalion were tasked with destroying the Separatists' proton cannons, which prevented Republic cruisers from landing reinforcements. The advance was stalled by heavy resistance and the use of Twi'lek civilians as living shields. Kenobi, ever the strategist, sent 2 of his best scouts, Waxer and Boyle, to infiltrate the capital city of Nabat. Inside the ruined city, the two clones discovered a young Twi'lek orphan named Numa. Initially wary, the girl soon formed a bond with the soldiers, her innocence a poignant contrast to the destruction around them. She led them through secret tunnels beneath the city, allowing them to bypass the droid patrols and reach the prisoners. The liberation of the Twi'lek hostages, combined with Kenobi's main assault, broke the Separatist line. The cannons were destroyed. As the 212th marched through Nabat, Numa tearfully reunited with Waxer and Boyle, calling them Nera brother. It was a small, human moment that underscored what they were truly fighting for. Not territory, but people. Chapter 06. The Liberation of Ryloth. Part 2. With the capital of Nabat secured and Republic forces landing in strength, the final phase of the Ryloth campaign commenced. The objective was the city of Lesu, where Wat Tambor had established his headquarters and held the remaining Twi'lek population captive. The assault was to be led by Jedi Master Mace Windu, commanding a force of clone troopers alongside the newly freed Twi'lek resistance fighters, led by the charismatic and determined Cham Syndulla. The partnership was fraught with tension from the start. Syndulla, a passionate freedom fighter, deeply distrusted the Republic. He feared that one occupying force would simply be replaced by another. He argued for Twi'lek autonomy, demanding that his people play the primary role in their own liberation. Windu, while understanding, was bound by the strategic realities of the war. He knew the clones' military precision was essential for a swift victory with minimal casualties. Their initial plan involved a direct assault, using a captured Separatist troop carrier as a Trojan horse to cross a fortified plasma bridge. The infiltration was a success, allowing Republic forces to establish a beachhead. However, Wat Tambor, in a display of calculated greed, began looting the city, loading its treasures onto transports. His priority was profit, not victory. This act of blatant avarice provided an opportunity. As the battle for Lesu raged, Windu and Syndulla put aside their differences, their combined forces pressing the attack. They infiltrated Tambor's command center, cornering the Techno-Union leader. Tambor, arrogant to the last, attempted to bargain, believing his position made him too valuable for the Separatists to abandon. He was mistaken. Count Dooku, on the order of Darth Sidious, commanded the droid bombers to destroy the city, sacrificing Tambor to deny the Republic a valuable prize. The Republic forces managed to halt the bombing run just in time. With Tambor captured and the droid army in disarray, Ryloth was free. In the aftermath, Mace Windu and Cham Syndulla stood amidst the celebrating crowds. Windu pledged that the Republic would leave once the Separatists were fully driven from the system, a promise Syndulla accepted with cautious optimism. A partnership had been forged, one built on a shared victory. Yet the seeds of distrust remained, a quiet tension that would linger long after the Republic fleet departed. Ryloth was a symbol of successful collaboration, but also a quiet harbinger of the political complexities that would increasingly define the war. Act 2: Engines of War. Chapter 07. The Holocron Heist. As the war expanded, it became clear that the next generation of Jedi would be a primary target for the Sith. Darth Sidious, the shadow puppeteer of the conflict, coveted the future of the Order. To this end, he hired the most notorious bounty hunter in the galaxy, the cold, calculating Duros named Cad Bane. Bane's mission was audacious: infiltrate the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and steal a sacred Jedi holocron. The holocron contained the Kyber memory crystal, a list of known Force-sensitive children throughout the galaxy, the future Padawans and Knights of the Jedi Order. Bane's plan was a masterpiece of infiltration and deception. Using a shape-shifting Claudite accomplice named Cato Parasiti, he bypassed the temple's formidable security, moving through its hallowed halls like a ghost. He even subdued Jedi Knight Bolaro Pal and exploited his knowledge to navigate the Holocron Vault's defenses. Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano, alerted to the breach, raced to stop him. The confrontation in the vault was a blur of blaster fire and lightsaber strikes. Bane was a formidable opponent, his skill and customized equipment making him a match for any Jedi. He successfully escaped with the holocron, leaving the Jedi Order in a state of shock and vulnerability. Their most sacred space had been violated. The chase was on. Skywalker and Kenobi tracked Bane's fleet, leading to a desperate battle in the Deveron system. In the chaos, Bane captured Ahsoka. Aboard his vessel, he subjected her to torture, attempting to force her to open the holocron, which could only be accessed by a Jedi. She resisted, her will unbroken. The final confrontation took place on Bane's hidden starship base. Skywalker and Kenobi, feigning departure, staged a daring rescue. They boarded the station, fighting through Bane's syndicate of bounty hunters. The climax was a tense standoff. Bane threatened to eject Ahsoka into the vacuum of space. It was a calculated risk that failed. The Jedi rescued Ahsoka and recovered the holocron, but Bane, ever the survivor, managed to escape. Though the list of Force-sensitive children was safe for the moment, the incident left a deep scar. The Jedi had been reminded of their vulnerability, not just on the battlefield, but at the very heart of their order. And Cad Bane had proven that for the right price, no target was out of reach. Darth Sidious had been thwarted, but his interest in the future of the Force had only intensified. He would find other means to achieve his goals. Chapter 08. Return to Geonosis. The war came full circle, returning to the red dust planet where it had all begun, Geonosis. Intelligence revealed that the Geonosians, under their leader Poggle the Lesser, were constructing a massive new droid foundry, far larger than the one destroyed in the initial battle. This new factory was protected by a powerful shield generator, and its production lines were churning out a terrifying new weapon, an indestructible supertank. The Republic could not allow this facility to become operational. The Second Battle of Geonosis was a massive, coordinated assault, codenamed Point Rain. Jedi generals Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ki-Adi-Mundi led a three-pronged invasion force. The landing was a scene of utter chaos. The Geonosian defenses were formidable, and the air was thick with red dust and green laser fire. Republic gunships were shot out of the sky, and clone casualties were staggering. It was a brutal, grinding advance against a determined enemy on their home turf. Skywalker's 501st Legion and Mundi's Galactic Marines pushed towards the shield generator. The fighting was relentless, a desperate struggle through canyons and caves. Ahsoka Tano and fellow Padawan Barriss Offee were tasked with a critical mission: to infiltrate the factory itself and destroy its main power reactor from within. They navigated a labyrinth of catacombs beneath the surface, facing Geonosian warriors and the factory's automated defenses. Meanwhile, Kenobi's forces engaged the new supertanks. The lumbering war machines were impervious to conventional rockets and blaster fire. It took the combined ingenuity of the Jedi and the sheer firepower of clone artillery to bring them down. After a grueling battle, the shield generator was destroyed, allowing Republic forces to finally assault the main factory. Inside, Ahsoka and Barriss reached the reactor. They planted their explosives but were trapped by the droids and collapsing debris. In a desperate move, they used the Force to commandeer one of the new supertanks, blasting their way to freedom just as the factory erupted in a massive explosion. The primary objective was achieved, but the battle was not over. Poggle the Lesser had escaped into the ancient tunnels beneath the ruined foundry, and the Jedi knew they had to capture him to prevent the Geonosians from rebuilding yet again. The victory at Point Rain was decisive, but it had come at a tremendous cost, and a new, more insidious threat was waiting in the darkness below. Chapter 09. The Worms in the Mind. The pursuit of Poggle the Lesser led the Jedi deep into the subterranean network of Geonosis. There, they discovered a chilling secret. The Geonosians were not a simple hive mind. They were controlled by a queen, Karina the Great, who ruled from an ancient temple known as Progate. More disturbing was her method of control. A parasitic brainworm capable of reanimating the dead and enslaving the living. Poggle, seeking refuge, fled to the Queen's throne room. Jedi Knight Luminara Unduli pursued him, only to be captured. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, along with a contingent of clones, followed, entering the eerie, cavernous temple. Queen Karina, a grotesque and ancient creature, offered them a chilling proposition. Join her, and together they could achieve a form of collective, immortal consciousness. The Jedi refused, and a fierce battle ensued. They rescued Luminara and captured Poggle, but not before the Queen was killed when the temple collapsed around her. The immediate threat seemed neutralized. Poggle was secured aboard a Republic medical frigate, along with samples of the Geonosian brainworms for study. However, one worm, small and undetected, survived. It escaped its containment and began to spread, infecting the clone troopers on the ship one by one. The situation aboard the frigate quickly spiraled into a nightmare. Clones turned on their brothers, their eyes vacant, their movements puppet-like, all controlled by the parasite. Ahsoka Tano and Barriss Offee, who were escorting the captured Poggle, found themselves in a desperate fight for survival. The worms were cunning, spreading through bites, passing from host to host with terrifying speed. Even the dead were not safe, their bodies rising to attack the living. The true horror emerged when Barriss herself was infected. The worm took control, forcing her to attack her friend. Ahsoka was faced with an agonizing choice: fight her fellow Padawan, potentially harming her, or be overcome. The duel that followed, in the cold, sterile corridors of the ship, was a test of Ahsoka's skill and emotional fortitude. The only way to stop the infestation was to expose the worms to extreme cold, their one vulnerability. Working with the remaining uninfected clones, Ahsoka managed to sabotage the ship's life support, plunging the vessel into freezing temperatures. The worms were killed, their hold on the clones broken. Barriss was saved, and the crisis was averted. The incident was classified at the highest levels, a terrifying glimpse into the biological weapons the Separatists were willing to employ. It was a victory, but one that left a deep psychological chill, a reminder that some horrors of war were not fought with blasters and lightsabers, but in the silent spaces of the mind. Chapter 10. The Zillow Beast. On the planet Malastare, the Republic deployed a new weapon of its own, the electro-proton bomb. Its purpose was to disable droid armies without harming organic life, a technological solution to the problem of civilian casualties. The bomb was a success, deactivating the Separatist forces in a single blast. But its detonation had an unforeseen consequence. The massive energy pulse awakened something ancient and colossal that had been slumbering deep beneath the planet's surface: the Zillow Beast. The creature was immense, its hide seemingly impenetrable to any weapon in the Republic arsenal. It rose from the depths, enraged and disoriented, wreaking havoc on both Republic and local Dug forces. The Jedi, led by Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker, were faced with a profound ethical dilemma. The creature was the last of its species, a magnificent, perhaps even sentient being. To destroy it would be an act of extinction. Chancellor Palpatine, however, saw not a living creature, but a military asset. The Zillow Beast's indestructible armor was a resource he coveted for the Republic war effort. He ordered the Jedi to capture the beast alive and transport it to Coruscant for study, using Dug fuel to create a substance that could stun the creature. The Jedi managed to subdue the behemoth and load it onto a massive transport. The arrival of the Zillow Beast on Coruscant was a spectacle, but behind the scenes, a dark debate unfolded. The scientist Dr. Sion Verbol was tasked with finding a way to replicate the beast's armored plates. She argued for humane methods, but Palpatine grew impatient. He ordered that the beast be killed so that its secrets could be unlocked more quickly, a decision that horrified Senator Amidala and the Jedi. Before the order could be carried out, the Zillow Beast, enraged by its captivity and the painful experiments, broke free. It rampaged through the galactic capital, a force of nature unleashed upon a world of durasteel and glass. The city's defenses were useless against it. The creature seemed drawn to Palpatine himself, sensing his malevolent intent, and scaled the Senate Executive Building in a direct confrontation with the Chancellor. The Jedi were forced to act. To save the countless lives threatened by the rampage, they had to do the one thing they had sought to avoid. Using modified stun tanks loaded with a potent toxin, they killed the Zillow Beast. The creature fell, its death a tragic spectacle against the Coruscant skyline. In the aftermath, a somber Palpatine addressed the public, mourning the sad necessity of the act. But in private, he gave a chilling order: have the Zillow Beast cloned. The incident was a dark victory for the Chancellor, who had not only acquired the scientific prize he sought, but had also successfully maneuvered the Jedi into compromising their own principles for the greater good, a pattern that was becoming dangerously common. Chapter 11. The Deserter. The war's reach was long, its battles fought on countless worlds. On the planet Seleucami, after a grueling campaign, Republic forces were hunting the last pockets of separatist resistance. During one such patrol, Captain Rex of the 501st was critically wounded by a sniper's bolt. Stranded and separated from his unit, he sought shelter in a remote farmhouse. There, he made a startling discovery. The farmer was a clone, a deserter named Cut Lawquane, who had abandoned the army to build a life with a Twi'lek woman, Sue, and her 2 children. For Rex, a soldier to whom duty and brotherhood were everything, the encounter was a profound challenge to his worldview. He saw Cut not as a traitor, but as a man who had chosen a different path, a life of peace and family that was utterly alien to a career soldier. Their conversations were tense, a debate over the very nature of their existence. Was their purpose solely to fight and die for the Republic, or did they have the right to choose their own destiny? Cut argued that he was not a number, but a man, and he was fighting his own war by protecting his family. Rex, steeped in the culture of military discipline, struggled to comprehend this perspective. To him, desertion was the ultimate betrayal of his brothers still fighting on the front lines. The philosophical impasse was cut short by the arrival of a new threat: a squadron of commando droids. Their escape pod, having crashed nearby, descended upon the farm. The 2 clones, the loyal captain and the deserter, were forced to fight side by side to defend the homestead. They set up a defensive perimeter, their shared training and instincts taking over. It was a desperate, brutal fight. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with the fierce determination of soldiers protecting something precious. Together, they defeated the commando droids, securing the safety of Cut's family. In the morning, with Republic forces having located him, Rex prepared to leave. He had a choice to make. He could report Cut Lawquane, fulfilling his duty as an officer of the Grand Army, or he could remain silent. Looking at Cut and his family, Rex made his decision. He told Cut that as far as he was concerned, he had found an empty, abandoned farm. He left, his perception of the war and of himself subtly but irrevocably altered. The encounter on Seleucami planted a seed of doubt in the captain's mind, a quiet question about what it truly meant to be a good soldier. Chapter 12. Amperes. Whisper of conspiracy on Mandalore. While the Republic and Separatists clashed across the galaxy, the neutral system of Mandalore fought a war of its own, a war of ideals. Duchess Satine Kryze, the planet's pacifist leader, struggled to maintain her world's neutrality against immense pressure from both sides of the conflict. Her greatest challenge, however, came from within. A splinter group known as the Death Watch, clinging to Mandalore's ancient warrior past, sought to overthrow her and restore the planet to its martial glory. The Death Watch was led by Pre Vizsla, the governor of Mandalore's moon, Concordia. Publicly, Vizsla was a loyal supporter of the Duchess. In secret, He was the heir to a warrior legacy, wielding the Darksaber, an ancient lightsaber that was a symbol of Mandalorian leadership. He secretly collaborated with Count Dooku, who provided the Death Watch with resources in the hope of destabilizing the system and forcing it into the Separatist fold. Obi-Wan Kenobi, an old friend of Duchess Satine from his days as a Padawan, was dispatched to investigate rumors of the Death Watch's resurgence. His investigation on Concordia led him directly to Vizsla, uncovering the secret army and the Separatist connection. A duel ensued, Kenobi's lightsaber against Vizsla's Darksaber and advanced Mandalorian armor. Kenobi managed to escape, but the threat was now clear. The Death Watch was real, and it had powerful allies. The conspiracy deepened. A series of terrorist attacks, including the deployment of assassin droids aboard Satine's royal vessel, the Coronet, were designed to make her government appear weak and incapable of maintaining order. These acts were orchestrated to create fear and turn the Mandalorian people against her pacifist policies. The corruption reached the highest levels of the Mandalorian government. Prime Minister Almec, Satine's most trusted advisor, was secretly working with a black market ring, smuggling supplies out of the system and creating artificial shortages to fuel public discontent. Ahsoka Tano, sent to Mandalore to instruct at a cadet academy, uncovered the plot with the help of Satine's idealistic nephew, Corky. Her investigation revealed that Almec was the mastermind behind the conspiracy to undermine the Duchess. He believed Mandalore's neutrality was a path to ruin, and that only by re-embracing its strength could it survive. Almec was arrested, but the exposure of such deep-seated corruption further weakened Satine's position. Her grip on power was slipping, and the whispers of war on Mandalore were growing into a roar. Interlude 01. The Midnight Oil. On Coruscant, the war was a distant hum, a stream of data scrolling across screens in the Senate administration buildings. For Aris Svelka, a senior legislative clerk, it was a war fought with flimsy plast and ink styluses. His office, deep within the sterile government district, was a canyon of stacked data pads and archived legal briefs. The window showed only the reflected lights of endless traffic lanes, a river of speeders that never slept. Tonight, like most nights, the tea on his desk had gone cold. He was processing casualty reports from the Outer Rim, cross-referencing them with supply requisitions and budgetary amendments. The names and numbers blurred together. Torrent Company, 501st Legion, losses at Ryloth, request for additional ATTE walkers. Amendment 47B to the Military Discretion Act. Each entry represented a life, a family, a strategic shift. But here, on level 5127, they were just data points. A junior aide, barely old enough to remember a time before the war, brought him another stack. From Senator Farr's office, the aide said, his voice heavy with fatigue. He needs the preliminary drafts for the new banking deregulation bill by morning. Aris nodded, not looking up. Onaconda Farr, a good man, a friend of Padme Amidala, trying to hold the center together. But the pressure from the corporate lobbyists and the warhawks was immense. Deregulation meant faster lines of credit for the war machine, but it also meant less oversight, more opportunity for the corrupt to profit. Aris had seen the preliminary reports. He knew who stood to gain. He also knew that to question it too loudly was to be branded unpatriotic. He pulled up the draft, its legal language dense and obfuscating. He read about collateralized debt obligations tied to munitions contracts, about discretionary funds for special military projects. He saw the loopholes, the cleverly worded phrases that would allow fortunes to be made from the conflict. He felt a familiar, weary sickness in his gut. He thought of the casualty lists, of the clone troopers, their designations becoming names in his mind after seeing them so often. He thought of the Jedi, their small numbers stretched so thin across a vast galaxy. He was just a clerk, a tiny cog in the immense bureaucracy of the Republic. But he saw the rot. He saw how every victory on the battlefield was being leveraged by unseen hands here in the core. How the Republic was slowly, methodically, being hollowed out from within. He took a sip of his cold tea, the bitterness sharp on his tongue, and began to write. The war had many fronts, and his was here, under the cold, artificial lights of a city that never slept. Act 3, Shadows and Revelations. Chapter 13. The Altar of Mortis. In the deepest reaches of the Outer Rim, an ancient distress signal, over 2,000 years old, suddenly reactivated. It was a mystery the Jedi Council could not ignore. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka Tano were dispatched to investigate. As they approached the source of the signal in the Krillithium system, their shuttle was pulled from hyperspace into a realm that defied all known laws of physics and cosmology. They found themselves on Mortis, a world that was not a world, a place that existed outside of time and space, a conduit for the Force itself. Mortis was inhabited by three beings of immense power: the Father, who represented balance; the Daughter, who embodied the light side; and the Son, who was an avatar of the dark side. The Father, ancient and weary, had drawn them there for a singular purpose. He was dying, and he needed someone to take his place, to keep his powerful children in check and maintain the cosmic balance. He believed Anakin Skywalker, the prophesied chosen one, was that person. The trials Anakin faced on Mortis were not of the flesh, but of the spirit. The Son, a being of pure darkness and ambition, tempted him with visions of his future, glimpses of his fall to the dark side, of Darth Vader, of the pain and suffering he would cause. These visions preyed on his deepest fears, his love for Padme, and his frustration with the Jedi Order. For a moment, Anakin succumbed, joining the Son in a brief but terrifying alliance. The Daughter, seeing the balance tipping towards catastrophe, intervened. She showed Anakin the truth of his destiny, the good he was capable of. The true test came when the Son, in a fit of rage, attempted to strike down his father. The Daughter sacrificed herself, taking the fatal blow meant for him. As she lay dying, she transferred her life essence into Ahsoka, who had been killed by the Son after he had briefly corrupted her with the dark side. Ahsoka was resurrected, but the balance on Mortis was shattered. With the Daughter gone, the Father knew that the Son's darkness could not be contained. In a final act of self-sacrifice, he plunged a mystical dagger into his own heart, weakening the Son just long enough for Anakin to deliver the killing blow with his lightsaber. As the three Force wielders faded into nothingness, Mortis itself began to crumble. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka escaped, awakening in the cockpit of their shuttle with no memory of the events that had transpired. All that remained was a profound sense of awe and a lingering question. They had stood on the altar of the Force itself and had been judged. The experience, though forgotten, left an indelible mark on Skywalker's soul, a shadow of a future he could not comprehend but would be forced to live. Chapter 14. The Citadel. The war effort was often dictated by intelligence, and the most valuable information was often the most dangerous to acquire. The Jedi discovered that the Separatists held a vital secret: the Nexus Route, a set of hyperspace lanes that bypassed both Republic and Separatist territory, allowing for surprise attacks deep in the heart of either power. The coordinates for this route were known by only one man, Jedi Master Even Piel, and he was being held in the most secure prison in the galaxy, the Citadel. Located on the planet Lola Sayu, the Citadel was a fortress designed specifically to hold Jedi. Its walls were impervious to lightsabers, its corridors filled with deadly traps, and its warden, the sadistic Osi Sobek, took personal pleasure in tormenting his prisoners. A conventional rescue was impossible. So, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi devised an unconventional plan. They, along with a hand-picked team of elite clone commandos, including Fives and Echo, would be frozen in carbonite to bypass the facility's life-form scanners. The infiltration was successful, but the rescue quickly became a desperate struggle for survival. Osi Sobek, alerted to their presence, activated the Citadel's full array of defenses. The Jedi and clones were hunted through a maze of laser grids, magnetic tunnels, and reprogrammed droids. They managed to free Master Peel and his officers, but not before Peel was grievously wounded. During the escape, the team became separated. Echo, the brave ARC trooper who had survived the Rishi Moon, was seemingly killed in an explosion while trying to secure an escape shuttle. His loss was a heavy blow, a stark reminder of the mission's brutal cost. The mortally wounded, even Peel knew he would not survive. In his final moments, he entrusted the two halves of the Nexus route coordinates to two separate individuals. He gave one half to his captain, a promising young officer named Wilhuff Tarkin. The other half he entrusted to Ahsoka Tano. He made her swear to deliver it only to the Jedi Council. The division of this critical intelligence between a military officer and a Jedi Padawan was a final, shrewd act, ensuring no single person could betray the secret. The survivors were eventually rescued, but the mission left a lasting impact. The loss of Echo was deeply felt by his brothers, and the interactions between Anakin Skywalker and Captain Tarkin revealed a disquieting alignment. Tarkin, a firm believer in decisive action and military authority, found a kindred spirit in Skywalker. He saw the Jedi Knight's willingness to bend the rules to achieve victory as a strength, a quality lacking in the more dogmatic members of the Jedi Order. It was the beginning of a mutual respect, a small seed of a future alliance that would one day have profound consequences for the galaxy. Chapter 15. The Night Sisters of Dathomir. Count Dooku, ever wary of betrayal, began to see his own apprentice, Asajj Ventress, as a threat. Her growing power in the dark side, honed by years of fighting at his side, had not gone unnoticed by his master, Darth Sidious. Sidious, adhering to the Sith rule of two, commanded Dooku to eliminate her. Dooku, ever the obedient apprentice, betrayed Ventress without hesitation, leaving her for dead after a brutal battle. But Ventress survived. Broken and filled with a burning desire for revenge, she returned to her homeworld of Dathomir, the mist-shrouded planet of the Night Sisters. She sought the aid of her clan, led by the powerful and ancient witch, Mother Talzin. Talzin, a master of strange and potent magics, agreed to help Ventress exact her revenge. They performed a ritual, rendering Ventress and her fellow Night Sisters invisible, and dispatched them to assassinate Dooku. The attempt failed. Dooku, powerful in the Force, fought them off, though the assault left him shaken. Realizing she needed a blunt instrument rather than a subtle blade, Mother Talzin conceived a new plan. She would provide Dooku with a new apprentice, a warrior of her own choosing, who would eventually turn on the Count. She selected a Zabrak from the Nightbrother clan, a warrior of immense physical strength named Savage Opress. Savage, the brother of a long-lost Zabrak warrior, was subjected to dark side magic that amplified his strength and rage, turning him into a monstrous, uncontrollable weapon. He was presented to Dooku as a tribute. To test his new apprentice, Dooku sent Savage on a mission to the Temple of Edit on Deveron. There, Savage brutally killed two Jedi, his rage and power impressing the Count. The final piece of the plan was set in motion. Savage was dispatched to Toydaria to capture the king. Ventress met him there, revealing their shared purpose. The confrontation that followed was a chaotic three-way betrayal. Savage, his mind clouded by Talzin's magic and Dooku's dark side training, turned on both his masters. He rejected Dooku's control and Ventress's quest for revenge. Overwhelmed by the conflicting commands and his own amplified rage, he fled, a lost and tormented soul. In the aftermath, Ventress returned to the Night Sisters, finding her place among them not as a Sith apprentice, but as a true daughter of Dathomir. Dooku was left without an apprentice, newly aware of Mother Talzin's power and ambition. And Savage Opress, a powerful but broken warrior, was loose in the galaxy, his destiny uncertain. Guided by a strange instinct, he began a quest given to him by Mother Talzin, to find his lost brother, a brother whose name echoed in the dark corners of the Galaxy Mall. Chapter 16. The Return of a Shadow. The whispers of Savage Opress's quest reached the dark corners of the galaxy. He sought his brother, a brother long thought dead, a former Sith Lord consumed by rage and madness. His journey led him to the junk world of Lotho Minor, a planet-wide scrap heap where the lost and broken things of the galaxy went to die. There, in the deepest tunnels, he found him. Darth Maul, the apprentice of Darth Sidious, had survived his duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. He was a creature of pure madness, his mind shattered, his lower body replaced by a grotesque, spider-like chassis built from scrap. Savage brought his broken brother back to Dathomir. Mother Talzin used her powerful magic to restore Maul's mind and reshape his body, forging for him a new pair of cybernetic legs. The madness receded, replaced by a cold, singular purpose: revenge. Revenge against the Jedi who had taken his body, and revenge against the Sith Master who had abandoned him. Maul's first act was to lure Obi-Wan Kenobi into a trap. He massacred a village on the planet Raydonia, leaving a message for his old nemesis. Kenobi, compelled by his duty, went to face the ghost of his past. He found not a deranged creature, but a focused and powerful dark side warrior, his skills with the lightsaber undiminished. Obi-Wan would have been killed, had it not been for the unexpected arrival of Asajj Ventress. She, too, had a score to settle with Maul's brother Savage, and a bounty on his head provided the perfect excuse. The two former enemies, the Jedi Master and the spurned Sith apprentice, formed a temporary and uneasy alliance. Their combined strength was enough to fight the two Night Brothers to a standstill. Maul and Savage escaped, their partnership cemented in blood and a shared lust for power. They began to carve out a new path for themselves, one independent of both the Jedi and the Sith. They attacked a pirate outpost on Florum, drawing out Kenobi once more. In the ensuing battle, Jedi Master Adi Gallia was killed by Savage Opress, a brutal demonstration of his raw power. The duel was a chaotic affair, with Hondo Ohnaka's pirate gang caught in the middle. Obi-Wan managed to sever Savage's arm, forcing the brothers to retreat once again. The encounter taught Maul a valuable lesson. Brute force was not enough. To achieve his goals, to build a power base, to challenge both Sidious and the Jedi, he would need more than just his brother's rage and his own thirst for revenge. He would need an army. He would need a criminal empire. And he had learned the patience to build one. The shadow of the Sith had returned, not as an apprentice, but as a rival power, a third player in the great galactic game. Chapter 17. The Fire of Rebellion. On Onderon. The planet Onderon became a crucial test case for a new form of warfare. A world loyal to the Republic was occupied by a separatist-backed king. A group of rebels, fighting for the deposed true king, sought the Republic's help. The Jedi Council, hesitant to commit to a full-scale invasion, chose a different path. They would not fight the war for the rebels. They would teach the rebels how to fight for themselves. Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano were sent to a hidden base on Onderon's moon, DX Yoon, to train the insurgents. Captain Rex accompanied them, providing his invaluable expertise in military tactics and discipline. The rebel cell was a disparate group led by the siblings Steela and Saw Gerrera. Steela was a natural leader, calm and strategic, while her brother Saw was impulsive, aggressive, and driven by a burning hatred for the separatists. Also among them was Lux Bonteri, the son of a former separatist senator, whose allegiances had shifted after his mother's murder. The training was difficult. The rebels were passionate but undisciplined. Ahsoka, tasked with the primary training role, struggled to unify them. The tension between Saw's aggressive tactics and Steela's more measured approach was a constant source of friction. Anakin, however, saw the value in their passion. He encouraged them to use their anger, to focus it, a piece of advice that deeply troubled Obi-Wan. Once their training was complete, the rebels returned to Onderon. They began a campaign of strategic strikes against the droid army, using their knowledge of the local terrain and the tactics taught to them by the Jedi. They disabled tanks, blew up power generators, and rallied the local population to their cause, their ranks swelling with new recruits who rode the native flying beasts into battle. Their success was undeniable, but it drew the full attention of the separatist forces. The conflict escalated into a full-blown battle for the capital city of Izis. The rebels, though outgunned, fought with incredible bravery. Saw's recklessness nearly led to disaster on several occasions, but Steela's leadership held them together. The climax came during a final desperate push against the droid army. Steela, poised to execute a fatal blow against the Separatist command center, was targeted by a damaged but still functional gunship. In a tragic moment of self-sacrifice, she pushed Lux Bonteri to safety, taking the full force of the laser blast herself. Her death was a devastating blow, but it galvanized the rebellion. The people of Onderon, inspired by her sacrifice, rose up and overwhelmed the droid army. Onderon was liberated, but the victory was bittersweet. Saw Gerrera was left hardened and radicalized by his sister's death, his methods becoming more extreme. The Jedi had succeeded. They had created a template for asymmetrical warfare that would one day evolve into the Rebel Alliance. But they had also witnessed the profound personal cost of such conflicts, and had unwittingly forged one of the most zealous and dangerous figures of the coming galactic civil war. Chapter 18. The Gathering of the Young. At the heart of a Jedi's journey was the construction of their lightsaber. This sacred rite of passage began with the Gathering, a pilgrimage to the icebound planet of Ilum. It was there, within the sacred crystal caves, that Jedi younglings would find the Kyber crystal that was attuned to them, the living heart of their future weapon. A group of 6 younglings, including the precocious Wookiee Gungi and the studious Katuni, were escorted to Ilum by Ahsoka Tano. They were met by Master Yoda, who guided them through the ritual. The test was one of courage, patience, and self-discovery. Each youngling had to enter the caves alone and face their own inner challenges to find their crystal. The caves themselves seemed to test them, forcing them to overcome fear, doubt, and impatience. One by one, they emerged triumphant, their crystals in hand. Their journey back to Coruscant was aboard an ancient Jedi vessel, the Crucible. There, they met Professor Huyang, an ancient and wise architect droid who had overseen the construction of Jedi lightsabers for over 1,000 years. With his guidance, the younglings began to assemble their weapons, learning the delicate art of balancing the components and attuning them to their crystals. Their rite of passage, however, was violently interrupted. The pirate Hondo Ohnaka, seeing an opportunity for profit, attacked the Crucible. He captured Ahsoka and planned to sell the younglings and their rare Kyber crystals to the highest bidder. The younglings, armed only with their wits and their half-finished lightsabers, had to work together to survive. They outsmarted the pirates, using their nascent force abilities and teamwork to retake their ship. In a clever ruse, they joined Hondo's traveling circus to send a distress signal. The rescue came, but it was followed by a more dire threat. General Grievous, alerted to the presence of the Jedi on Florum, launched a full-scale invasion of Hondo's pirate base. The younglings were caught in the middle of a massive battle between the Separatists and the pirates. They fought with a bravery that belied their age, protecting one another and even saving Hondo's life. In the end, Hondo, impressed by their courage and with a flicker of his own buried honor, helped them escape. He returned Ahsoka's lightsaber and sent them on their way, his respect for the Jedi young'uns grudgingly earned. The younglings returned to the temple, their lightsabers now complete, their first taste of the galactic conflict, a harsh but valuable lesson. They had faced down pirates and droids, and in doing so, had taken their first true step into the larger world of the Jedi Knights they hoped to become. Act 4 Fault Lines. Chapter 19. The D Squad and the Void. In the vast machinery of the Grand Army of the Republic, some missions required not a battalion, but a scalpel. An urgent need arose to steal a separatist encryption module that would allow the Republic to decode enemy communications. The challenge was that the module was located aboard a separatist dreadnought, and the ship's sensors would detect any life form larger than a small rodent. The solution was unconventional, a mission to be carried out entirely by droids. The unit, dubbed D Squad, was an eclectic mix. It was led by the diminutive Colonel Meber Gascon, a Republic strategist who was miniaturized for the mission. The team consisted of R2D2, a pit droid named WAC-47, and several other astromechs. Their task was to infiltrate the ship, steal the module, and escape undetected. The mission was a success, a testament to the ingenuity and courage of the small droids. But their escape was where their adventure truly began. A freak ion storm in hyperspace caused their shuttle to crash on the desolate planet of Abafar. They found themselves in a vast, empty expanse known as the Void, a seemingly endless desert of white salt flats. The crash separated them from their commander, Colonel Gascon, who was captured by separatist droids operating a massive mining complex on the planet. As R2D2 and the droids searched for their commander, they made a remarkable discovery. They encountered a clone commando, haggard and suffering from amnesia, who identified himself only as Gregor. He was a Republic commando, CC-5576, missing in action and presumed dead after the brutal Battle of Sarish. He had been living a quiet life, working as a dishwasher in a local diner, his past a complete mystery to him. R2D2, recognizing the Republic insignia on Gregor's worn armor, helped him to remember his true identity. The memories came flooding back of his training, his brothers, his duty. With his sense of purpose restored, Gregor devised a plan to help the droids rescue their commander and escape the planet. He led them in a daring assault on the separatist mining complex. The escape was a desperate gamble. The separatists had planted a massive ion bomb, powerful enough to destroy the entire facility and everything for miles around. Gregor, in a final act of selfless heroism, held off the droid forces, buying the droids and Colonel Gascon enough time to reach their shuttle. He was seemingly lost in the massive explosion, a hero rediscovered only to be lost again. R2D2 and D Squad returned to the Republic, the encryption module in hand. The mission was a strategic victory, but for R2, it was also a poignant reminder that heroes could be found in the most unlikely of places, from the smallest droids to the forgotten soldiers lost in the void. Chapter 20. The Shadow of Mandalore. The return of Darth Maul and Savage Opress sent ripples through the galactic underworld. Maul, no longer a mere assassin, now possessed a grander vision. He sought to build a criminal empire, a third power to challenge both the Jedi and the Sith. Using Savage's brute force and his own cunning, he began to forge the Shadow Collective. He started with the criminal enterprises of the Outer Rim, forcibly recruiting the Black Sun and the Pike Syndicate into his growing alliance. Those who resisted were brutally eliminated. His ambition then turned to the Hutt Council on Tatooine. After a show of force that left several Hutts dead, he secured their reluctant allegiance. Maul now commanded a formidable army of mercenaries, bounty hunters, and criminals. His target was Mandalore. He saw in the neutral planet, riven by internal conflict, the perfect seat for his new empire. His plan was not one of direct invasion, but of destabilization. He used his criminal forces to attack Sundari, the Mandalorian capital, creating a crisis that Duchess Satine's pacifist government was ill-equipped to handle. The people, desperate for a leader who could protect them, turned against her. It was then that Vizsla and his Death Watch reappeared, presenting themselves as the saviors of Mandalore. They drove off Maul's forces in a series of staged battles, a piece of political theater designed to win them the support of the populace. The plan worked perfectly. Satine was imprisoned, and Vizsla was hailed as a hero, taking control of the government. But Vizsla had underestimated his partner. Once in power, he betrayed Maul, imprisoning him and Savage. Maul, however, was a master of manipulation. He escaped and challenged Vizsla to a duel for leadership of the Death Watch, invoking ancient Mandalorian tradition. The battle was fierce, a contest between the Darksaber and Maul's raw, dark side power. Maul was victorious. He decapitated Vizsla in the throne room, claiming the Darksaber, and with it, leadership of Mandalore. Some Mandalorians, led by Bo-Katan Kryze, Satine's own sister, refused to follow an outsider and a Darksider. They broke away, forming a resistance movement. Duchess Satine, in a desperate plea for help, escaped and contacted Obi-Wan Kenobi. Kenobi, acting alone and against the Council's orders, came to her aid. It was a fatal mistake. Maul captured him and, in a final, cruel act of revenge, executed Satine in front of him. Her death, a poignant and tragic end to her struggle for peace. Just as Maul's victory seemed absolute, a new player arrived. Darth Sidious, his own plans for the galaxy threatened by his former apprentice's rise, came to Mandalore. The duel that followed was a clash of titans. Sidious, with effortless superiority, killed Savage Opress and subdued Maul. He did not kill his former apprentice, however. He had other plans for him, a role yet to play in the shadows of the war. Mandalore was left shattered, a world now locked in a brutal civil war, its fate more uncertain than ever. Chapter 21. The Jedi Who Walked Away. A wave of dissent and disillusionment began to ripple through Coruscant. The endless war, the mounting casualties, and the growing power of the Chancellor led some to believe that the Jedi themselves were the problem. This sentiment was tragically weaponized when a bomb detonated at the Jedi Temple hangar, killing clones and civilian workers alike. It was an act of terrorism designed to look like an inside job. The investigation led the Jedi Council to a munitions expert named Letta Termund. Before she could reveal who had hired her, however, she was murdered, force-choked in her prison cell. The evidence, carefully and maliciously planted, all pointed to one person, Ahsoka Tano. Forced to flee, Ahsoka became a fugitive in the Coruscant underworld. She was hunted by her former comrades, led by Anakin Skywalker and Plo Koon. Anakin, fiercely loyal to his Padawan, believed in her innocence, but the Council, under pressure from the military and the public, was less certain. Ahsoka, seeking to clear her name, formed an unlikely alliance with her old adversary, Asajj Ventress, who had become a bounty hunter. But the trail of evidence only seemed to tighten the net around her. She was captured and brought before the Jedi Council. In a move that shocked the Order, they voted to expel her, stripping her of her rank as Padawan. They turned her over to the Republic military to stand trial for treason and murder, with Admiral Tarkin prosecuting the case. The trial was a public spectacle, the sentiment of the Senate and the people turning sharply against her. Anakin, working against the clock, refused to give up. His investigation led him to a startling discovery. He confronted Barriss Offee, the Padawan who had fought alongside Ahsoka on Geonosis. Barriss confessed. She had orchestrated the entire plot, believing the Jedi had lost their way, becoming warmongers and servants of the dark side. She had bombed the temple to make a statement, and framed Ahsoka to expose what she saw as the Order's hypocrisy. Anakin arrived at the trial just as the verdict was about to be read. He brought Barriss with him, who confessed her crimes before the entire court. Ahsoka was exonerated. The Jedi Council, realizing their grave error, offered her a full apology and invited her to rejoin the Order, promising to reinstate her and promote her to the rank of knight. But the damage was done. Ahsoka's faith in the Jedi Order and in herself was shattered. She had been betrayed not just by a friend, but by the institution she had dedicated her life to. In a moment of profound and heartbreaking decision, she refused their offer. She turned and walked away from Anakin, away from the temple, away from the only life she had ever known. Her departure left a deep wound in the heart of her master, and a quiet, unanswered question about the true path of the Jedi in a galaxy at war. Chapter 22. Good soldiers follow orders. The war's relentless churn placed immense strain on the clone army. On the orbital space station over Ringo Vinda, Anakin Skywalker and the 501st were locked in a brutal, grinding battle against Admiral Trench. During the fight, a respected clone trooper, Tup, suddenly entered a trance-like state. He turned his weapon on a Jedi Master, Tippler, and killed her, muttering the cryptic phrase, "Good soldiers follow orders." The incident sent shockwaves through the command structure. Tup was sedated and sent back to Kamino for analysis, escorted by his close friend, the ARC Trooper Fives. Fives was convinced that his brother was not responsible for his actions, that something had been done to him. His investigation began to uncover a conspiracy of staggering proportions. On Kamino, the cloners, led by Nala Se, insisted that Tup had suffered from a virus. But Fives, with the help of the medical droid AZI-3, conducted his own secret examination. They discovered a tumor in Tup's brain. It was not a natural growth. It was a biochip, an organic implant that had somehow malfunctioned. Fives realized that every clone trooper had the same chip implanted in their heads at birth. The Kaminoans claimed it was an inhibitor chip, designed to temper the clone's aggression. Fives suspected it had a far more sinister purpose. His investigation was a race against time. The Kaminoans, acting under secret orders, tried to silence him at every turn. They terminated Tup and attempted to wipe Fives's memory. He escaped, removing his own chip to prove he was of sound mind. He took his evidence directly to Chancellor Palpatine. It was a fatal miscalculation. Palpatine, the architect of the entire conspiracy, sprang his trap. He framed Fives, making it appear as though the ARC trooper had attempted to assassinate him. Fives became the most wanted man on Coruscant, a fugitive hunted by his own brothers. In a desperate final act, he arranged a meeting with the two people he trusted most, Anakin Skywalker and Captain Rex. He lured them to a warehouse in the industrial sector, hoping to explain what he had discovered. But he was frantic, his explanations rambling and paranoid, the evidence of a vast conspiracy sounding like the ravings of a madman. Before he could make them understand, the Coruscant Guard, led by Commander Fox, stormed the warehouse. Believing Fives to be a threat, they shot him. Fives died in Captain Rex's arms, his last words a desperate plea for his brother to find the truth, to look into the darkness of the conspiracy he had uncovered. His death was officially ruled the result of a malfunctioning chip and psychological breakdown. But Captain Rex, deeply shaken, filed a private report, documenting his brother's final frantic warnings. The truth of the inhibitor chips was buried once again, but for Rex, a seed of terrible doubt had been planted. He and a handful of others who knew Fives now carried a piece of a puzzle they could not yet comprehend, a dark secret at the very heart of the Grand Army of the Republic. Chapter 23. The Scipio Affair. The financial underpinnings of the war were as critical as any battlefront. The intergalactic banking clan, officially neutral, provided loans to both the Republic and the Separatists, its stability guaranteed by its vaults on the icy world of Scipio. When intelligence emerged suggesting corruption within the clan's leadership, the Republic saw an opportunity to intervene. The plan involved an old acquaintance of Padme Amidala, Rush Clovis. Clovis, a senator from Scipio with a complex personal history with Padme, was positioned to expose the corruption and take over leadership of the banking clan. bringing it firmly under Republic control. The mission was fraught with personal and political tension. Anakin Skywalker, assigned to protect Padme on Scipio, was consumed by jealousy over her past relationship with Clovis. The plan succeeded. Clovis, with Padme's help, uncovered the deep-seated corruption, and the clan's leadership was overthrown. He was installed as the new head of the banks. However, he quickly found himself a pawn in a much larger game. Count Dooku, on behalf of the Sith, leveraged Clovis's past dealings, forcing him to raise interest rates on the Republic, plunging the government into a financial crisis. Chancellor Palpatine used the crisis to his advantage, arguing that the banking clan could no longer be trusted. He dispatched a military force, led by Anakin Skywalker, to invade the neutral world of Scipio and nationalize the banks. The invasion was a swift and brutal affair, a clear violation of sovereign territory done in the name of security. In the chaos of the invasion, Dooku's forces also arrived, seeking to punish Clovis for his role. The conflict culminated in a dramatic confrontation on a high balcony. Clovis, Padme, and Anakin were attacked by droid forces. During the struggle, Clovis, in a final act of redemption, sacrificed himself to save Padme, falling to his death in the icy chasms of Scipio. The affair was a resounding success for Palpatine. The Republic, now in control of the galaxy's central financial institution, had unprecedented power. The war effort was secured, funded by the very institution that had once profited from its neutrality. The invasion of a neutral world, a clear act of aggression, was hailed as a necessary step to ensure stability. Padme, who had hoped for a peaceful resolution, was left horrified by the military takeover. She saw the Republic abandoning its own principles, becoming the very thing it claimed to be fighting against. The lines between right and wrong were becoming increasingly blurred, and the Chancellor's power was growing step by calculated step. Chapter 24. The Path Beyond. As the war raged, a profound disquiet settled over the Jedi Order. Despite their victories, the dark side continued to grow, shrouding the future and their own vision. Master Yoda, the oldest and wisest among them, felt this disturbance most keenly. He began to hear a voice from beyond the grave, the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, his former student who had been struck down on Naboo. Qui-Gon spoke of a path to consciousness after death, a way to retain one's identity within the cosmic force, a skill thought impossible. The Council, concerned for Yoda's well-being, believed he might be under the influence of the Sith. But Yoda, trusting his instincts, chose to follow the voice. His journey first led him to Dagobah, a world potent with the living force. There, Qui-Gon's spirit manifested more clearly, guiding him on the next step of his quest, to find the source of the Force itself, a mysterious world that was the birthplace of the midi-chlorians. His pilgrimage took him to a strange, ethereal realm, home to the 5 Force priestesses, ancient beings who were the gatekeepers to the deepest mysteries of the Force. They agreed to test Yoda, to see if he was worthy of learning the secret of eternal consciousness. His trials were a journey into his own soul. He was forced to confront his deepest fears, his pride, and the darkness that resided within him. He battled a shadowy, monstrous version of himself, a physical manifestation of his own capacity for evil. His final test took him to the ancient Sith homeworld of Moraband, a desolate planet steeped in the dark side. There, in the Valley of the Dark Lords, he entered a state of deep meditation and was confronted by a powerful illusion crafted by Darth Sidious himself. He saw a vision of the future, a glimpse of the Jedi Order's destruction, of the Temple in flames, and of a final, desperate battle against the Sith Lord. He saw Anakin Skywalker at a crossroads and was tempted with the vision of a peaceful end to the war, a future where the Jedi won without further conflict. Yoda saw the illusion for what it was, a trap. He rejected the false victory, understanding that the struggle against the dark side was eternal, and that true victory was not about defeating an enemy, but about letting go of fear, attachment, and the desire for power. He had passed the test. He returned to the Jedi Temple, his journey a secret kept between him and a few trusted masters. He now knew the truth. The Jedi were not winning the war. In fact, they could not win it in the way they thought. But he had learned of a new path, a way to achieve victory beyond death. It was a secret he would carry, a small ember of hope for a future he now knew would be far darker than any of them could imagine. The war would be lost, but the fight for the soul of the galaxy was just beginning. Interlude 02. Repainting armor. The hangar bay of the Venator-class cruiser was a cacophony of hissing pneumatics and echoing commands. But in a quiet corner, near the ammunition lockers, a small group of 501st troopers had set up an informal workshop. Trooper Kix, the platoon's medic, was carefully applying a new coat of blue paint to a fresh set of shoulder pauldrons. The air smelled of sealant and ozone. "Hold it steady, Jesse," Kix said, his voice muffled by his helmet's vocabulator. Jesse, his helmet adorned with the symbol of the Republic, held the piece of armor still. "Think she'll like it?" he asked. "She'll know what it means." A third trooper, a veteran with graying temples named Oppo, replied. He was cleaning the lens of his own helmet, his movements precise and economical. "It's about respect. For her and for the captain." They were preparing for the siege of Mandalore. Word had come down the chain of command. Their former commander, Ahsoka Tano, would be joining them for the operation. She was not a Jedi anymore, not officially their commander, but to the men of the 501st, especially the veterans who had served with her since the beginning, she was still one of them. It was Captain Rex's idea, a gesture of solidarity. The entire 332nd Company, a division of the 501st assigned to Ahsoka, would bear her markings. Their helmets were being repainted, the blue of the 501st, overlaid with the distinct orange and white pattern of Ahsoka's Togruta face. Kix finished the pauldron and set it down to dry. He picked up his own helmet. It felt strange to alter the markings he had worn for years, a symbol of his identity, his brotherhood, but it also felt right. Ahsoka had walked away from the Order, but she had never walked away from them. She had always fought for them, trusted them. This was their way of returning that trust. "Remember Christophsis?" Jesse asked, his voice softer now. "She was just a kid, a snippy little thing," General Skywalker called her. Oppo chuckled, a dry, static-filled sound. "She saved our necks that day, and a dozen times after." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic hiss of the paint sprayer, a stark contrast to the blaster fire they were all used to. Each helmet was a tribute, a silent promise. They were not just soldiers following orders. They were Captain Rex's men. They were Anakin Skywalker's legion. And for this one last campaign, they would be Ahsoka Tano's company. The paint was more than just a decoration. It was a statement of loyalty, a bond that transcended the formal hierarchies of the Grand Army. It was the color of family. Act V. The Tipping Point. Chapter 25. Reunion at the Siege of Mandalore. The end of the war was in sight. Republic forces pressing their advantage were pushing the Separatists back on all fronts. It was then that Bo-Katan Kryze came to the Jedi with a critical piece of intelligence. She had located Darth Maul. The former Sith Lord was entrenched on Mandalore, his shadow collective controlling the planet. She requested the Republic's help to remove him, offering a strategic alliance. For Obi-Wan Kenobi, the request was a painful echo of the past, a reminder of Duchess Satine's tragic death. For the Jedi Council, it was a distraction from the primary goal of capturing General Grievous and ending the war. They were reluctant to commit forces to an internal Mandalorian conflict. But for Anakin Skywalker, it was a matter of loyalty. The request had come through his former Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka had been operating in the shadows of the galaxy since leaving the Order. Her path had led her to Bo-Katan, and she saw the liberation of Mandalore as a just cause. a way to help people without the political baggage of the Jedi or the Republic. She presented the case to Anakin and Obi-Wan, her presence a mix of comfort and awkwardness. The reunion was bittersweet, the unspoken rift between them still present. Anakin, without hesitation, agreed to help. He divided his celebrated 501st Legion, giving command of a new division, the 332nd Company, to Captain Rex, who would serve under Ahsoka's command as an advisor. As a gesture of their unwavering loyalty, Rex and his men had repainted their helmets with Ahsoka's facial markings. The sight of the troopers, their blue armor now adorned with the familiar orange and white patterns, was a deeply moving moment for Ahsoka, a silent affirmation of a bond that had never been broken. Anakin also returned her lightsabers to her, their crystals now glowing with a brilliant blue hue, a symbol of his continued faith in her. Just as they were preparing to depart for Mandalore, an urgent message arrived. General Grievous had been located on Utapau. More alarmingly, his forces had launched a daring surprise attack on Coruscant and kidnapped Chancellor Palpatine. Obi-Wan Kenobi and the bulk of the fleet were recalled for the rescue. The liberation of Mandalore was now entirely in Ahsoka's hands. It was a quiet, hurried farewell between master and apprentice. They stood on the bridge of the Venator, the fate of the galaxy pulling them in opposite directions. They wished each other luck, a simple phrase laden with years of shared history and unspoken regret. It would be the last time they ever saw each other. Anakin Skywalker left to save the Chancellor, walking toward his destiny. Ahsoka Tano, no longer a Jedi but a commander once more, turned her eyes toward Mandalore and the final, brutal battle that awaited her. Chapter 26. The Duel for a Planet's Soul. The assault on Sundari was a maelstrom of controlled chaos. Ahsoka Tano, standing on the ramp of a gunship, watched as the capital city's domed skylines grew closer. The 332nd Company, led by Bo-Katan's Mandalorian Night Owls, executed a daring high-altitude drop, jetpacks firing as they descended through heavy anti-aircraft fire. The battle for Mandalore had begun. The fighting in the streets was fierce. Maul's Mandalorian supercommandos, led by the ruthless Gar Saxon, were formidable opponents. Ahsoka, a blur of motion with her twin blue lightsabers, fought alongside the clones and Mandalorians, her presence a rallying point for the invasion force. She was a commander again, her instincts sharp, her connection to the men around her seamless. They captured a key sector of the city, but it was a feint. Maul was not interested in a conventional battle. He was hunting her. He allowed his forces to capture Captain Rex, luring Ahsoka into a trap. She tracked Maul to the Sundari throne room, the very place where he had murdered Duchess Satine. He sat upon the throne, not as a ruler, but as a predator waiting for his prey. The conversation that followed was not a negotiation, but a philosophical clash. Maul, his mind clear and terrifyingly lucid, spoke of the future. He spoke of Darth Sidious, of his plan to destroy the Republic and the Jedi, of a galaxy remade in the image of the Sith. He had foreseen it all, and he saw Anakin Skywalker as the key to Sidious's plan. He offered Ahsoka an alliance. Together, he claimed, they could kill Sidious and stop the coming darkness. He warned her that her former master was being groomed to become the Sith Lord's new apprentice. It was a chilling revelation, one that Ahsoka, still fiercely loyal to Anakin, refused to believe. She rejected his offer, her faith in her master unwavering. The rejection triggered the duel she knew was coming. The battle that erupted was a spectacular and desperate contest of skill and will. They fought through the throne room and out onto the high gantries and support beams above the city. It was a duel not just for Mandalore, but for the truth. Ahsoka fought with a precision and control that surpassed her years as a Padawan. Maul fought with a cunning rage, his double-bladed lightsaber, a whirlwind of deadly energy. In the end, Ahsoka outmaneuvered him. She cornered him on a high beam, and when he leaped to attack, She used the Force and the aid of the timely arrival of Republic gunships to trap him in a ray shield. Darth Maul, the Phantom Menace, the architect of the Shadow Collective, was captured. He raged in his prison, not in defeat, but in frustration, screaming at her that she had doomed them all, that she had no idea what was coming. As Ahsoka watched the captured Sith Lord, his frantic warnings echoed in her mind, a cold premonition of a darkness she could not yet see. Chapter 27. Order 66. Aboard the Venator-class Star Destroyer, en route back to Coruscant, a fragile sense of victory settled over the Republic forces. Maul was secured in a specially constructed Mandalorian prison cell, his dark side presence a palpable weight on the ship. Ahsoka Tano stood on the bridge with Captain Rex, the successful liberation of Mandalore, a significant, if hard-won, achievement. It was then that the galaxy changed forever. Rex suddenly stiffened, his hand reaching for his head. He fought against an unseen force, his body trembling. He managed to utter a single, choked warning to Ahsoka, "Find him. Find Fives." Before his will was overwhelmed, his blaster came up, his eyes turning cold and distant. Around them, every clone trooper on the bridge did the same. Chancellor Palpatine, now revealing himself as Darth Sidious, had issued Order 66. The inhibitor chips, the secret poison at the heart of the Grand Army, had been activated. The clones, the loyal soldiers who had fought and bled alongside the Jedi for years, turned on their commanders across the galaxy. On the Venator, they turned on Ahsoka. She was no longer a Jedi, but to the chips, she was close enough. She defended herself, deflecting their blaster bolts, her movements precise and non-lethal. She would not kill these men. They were her friends, her soldiers, and they were victims. She escaped into the ship's ventilation systems, a fugitive once again. Following Rex's cryptic warning, she used the ship's computer archives to find the file on the ARC Trooper Fives. She found Rex's private report, his documentation of Fives' death, and his warnings about the inhibitor chip. Understanding dawned. This was not a betrayal. It was a perversion, a form of enslavement. Knowing she could not fight the entire ship's contingent of clones alone, she made a desperate choice. She released Maul. She did not ally with him, but instead used him as a diversion, a force of chaos to distract the clones while she worked to save Rex. Maul, without a weapon, tore through the ship's corridors using the Force, a whirlwind of destruction. He ripped panels from the walls, crushed clones in their armor, and single-handedly disabled the ship's hyperdrive, sending it crashing out of hyperspace. Ahsoka, with the help of a few loyal astromech droids, lured Rex to the medical bay. They stunned him and placed him on an operating table. As the other clones blasted at the door, Ahsoka used the Force to guide the medical droid's surgical laser, performing a delicate, high-stakes operation. She found the chip in his brain and removed it. Rex awoke himself again, the horror of his actions clear on his face. The bond between them was restored, but they were now two people against an entire cruiser of soldiers who wanted them dead, on a ship that was slowly, inexorably falling from the sky. Chapter 28. Amperes, grave in the snow. The Star Destroyer was dying. Alarms blared through the shuddering corridors as the massive vessel began its terminal descent toward a small, unnamed ice moon. With Rex's will restored, he and Ahsoka fought not for victory, but for survival. Their goal was a single shuttle in the main hangar bay, their only hope of escape. They fought their way through their former comrades, Rex now using his blasters on a stun setting, unable to bring himself to kill his own brothers. They were soldiers, just like him, following orders they could not disobey. Every stunned trooper was an act of mercy in a situation that had none. Ahsoka, a guardian and a warrior, protected him, her lightsabers a shield against the endless volley of blaster fire. In the chaos, Maul made his own escape. He reached the hangar bay first, his rampage having crippled the ship's primary systems. He destroyed the remaining hyperdrive generators, ensuring the ship's destruction, and commandeered the last available shuttle. He and Ahsoka shared a final, fleeting glance across the hangar, a silent acknowledgement of their shared, strange destiny, before he departed, vanishing into the cold void. The Star Destroyer's death throes intensified. Ahsoka and Rex reached a secondary hangar, finding a single Y-wing fighter. As Rex prepared the ship for launch, Ahsoka stood at the hangar bay door, holding off the advancing tide of clone troopers. She watched their faces, the faces of men she had led, men she had trusted. She saw Jesse, the ARC trooper, who had fought with them through so many campaigns, his helmet now bearing her own markings, leading the charge against her. It was a final, heartbreaking betrayal, not of the man, but of the monster he had been forced to become. They escaped just as the Venator crashed. The impact was catastrophic, a fiery scar across the frozen landscape. In the silence that followed, under a gray and unforgiving sky, Ahsoka and Rex returned to the crash site. They walked through the wreckage, a graveyard of durasteel and snow, and one by one, they buried the dead. They dug graves for the clone troopers, for Jesse, for all the men of the 332nd Company. Rex stood over the rows of makeshift headstones, his helmet held in his hands, a lone soldier mourning an entire army of brothers. Ahsoka, in a final act of closure, dropped her blue lightsaber onto the snow in front of a clone's helmet. She was leaving that part of herself behind, burying the last remnant of her life as a servant of the Republic. They were survivors, two lost souls on a forgotten moon, witnesses to the end of an era. The war was over. The Republic had fallen, and in its place, a new and terrible empire was rising. Epilogue. The snows fell on the unnamed moon, covering the wreckage and the graves, blanketing the final battlefield of the 332nd Company in a shroud of white. The lightsaber Ahsoka left behind became a beacon, a mystery for those who would find it years later, a silent testament to a tragedy the galaxy would try to forget. Across the stars, the sun had set on the Republic. The Jedi Order was annihilated, its members hunted down as traitors, its temple burning. The clone army, its grim purpose served, was slowly decommissioned, replaced by recruited stormtroopers loyal not to a principle, but to a man. Chancellor Palpatine, now Emperor, stood before the Senate and declared the formation of the First Galactic Empire. His promises of security and stability met with thunderous applause. The liberty he had sworn to protect died with that applause. Anakin Skywalker was gone, consumed by the dark side, reborn as Darth Vader, the Emperor's feared enforcer, a black-armored specter of the hero he once was. But the end was also a beginning. On the desert world of Tatooine, Obi-Wan Kenobi, now a hermit in self-imposed exile, delivered an infant boy to a humble moisture-farming family, a hidden hope for the future. On the polished world of Alderaan, Bail Organa and his queen adopted a baby girl, a princess who would one day lead a rebellion. Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex, survivors of the Purge, vanished into the margins of the galaxy, their paths uncertain, but their spirits unbroken. Maul, a free agent once more, would continue his quest for power in the underworld, his story far from over. The Clone Wars had ended, but the echoes of its battles, its betrayals, and its sacrifices would reverberate for decades. The conflict had forged heroes, created monsters, and planted the seeds of both a tyrannical empire and the rebellion that would one day rise to challenge it. The great conflagration was over, but scattered across the galaxy, in the hearts of a grieving captain, a wandering woman, and two sleeping children, the embers of a new fire still glowed, waiting for the moment to be fanned into a flame. The fight was not over. It had just begun.